And now, the Deeper Thinking Podcast, a space for ideas and reflections in our uncertain times.
Welcome to the Deeper Thinking Podcast. Sam Altman sat calmly on stage at TED 2025, interviewed by TED's head curator, Chris Anderson, and spoke not just about artificial intelligence, but through it, narrating a shift that no longer belongs to the future, but to the atmosphere we already inhabit. This essay follows that conversation not to summarize it, but to trace its philosophical weight. What happens when machines don't just answer our questions, but anticipate them? When memory becomes infrastructural and intelligence ambient, when authorship dissolves into recursive remix and agency drifts from human to system. What emerges in Altman's own words is not a doctrine, but a condition. The calmness of his tone, the precision of his framing, the half-disclosures and open-ended metaphors, these aren't evasions. They are the architecture of a new kind of responsibility, one shaped less by control than by presence. AI, in this conversation, is no longer a tool. It is something more subtle, more entangled, a witness, a companion, a silent actor in the structure of what it now means to think, remember, and create. This essay is not about judging Altman's answers. It is about listening to what his framing reveals. The collapse of friction, the recursion of authorship, the slow migration from agency to interface. It holds close to the quotes themselves, preserving fidelity while surfacing the contradictions and motifs that structure this moment. Because the question is no longer whether we are ready for AI, it is whether we can narrate what it means to be human inside systems that already speak back. He sat in an interview, public, live, calm, with TED's Chris Anderson, speaking less like a tech CEO and more like someone trying to narrate a future that had already started without permission. There are two views you can take, Sam Altman said, his voice even. You can say, oh man, it's doing everything I do, what's going to happen to me? Or you can say, now there's this new tool, I can do a lot more. But the polarity, fear or empowerment, barely held. What emerged instead was a third register. Complicity. We are not watching the future arrive, we are participating in its quiet construction. When Anderson displayed a generated image, a diagram distinguishing intelligence from consciousness, Altman was impressed. It's part of GPT-4. It's got all of the intelligence in there. The phrasing matters, not some intelligence. All of it. Here, consciousness is no longer the upper limit of machine speculation. It's visualizable, compressible, promptable. And yet, Altman deflects the metaphysical stakes with a kind of functional pragmatism. We don't know if it's thinking that or just saw that a lot of times in the training set. And if you can't tell the difference, how much do you care? It is Roland Barthes, unintentionally. The author is no longer origin, just a perceptual fiction. But the implication cuts deeper. What matters now is not source, but effect. Throughout the conversation, Altman oscillates between reassurance and structural awe. There have been moments of awe, he admits, denying any conscious model but not denying its shape. What he gestures toward is Bernard Stiegler's pharmacon, technology as yields both cure and poison. The very tools designed to assist cognition might also subsume it. And yet Altman never turns prophetic. His tone remains tempered, deliberate, a kind of ethical minimalism designed not to unsettle, but to soothe. Pressed about authorship, Altman invokes tradition. People have been building on the creativity of others for a long time. But unlike historical intertextuality, this is planetary scale recursion. AI doesn't build from influence, it digests the archive. Anderson raises the case of ChatGPT imitating a named journalist without consent. Altman's answer is tentative. Clearly there's some cut and dry stuff. But how much inspiration can you take? The question echoes Glorian Zaldua's porous borderlands, not geography but epistemic space where identity, authorship and ownership blur into condition. In this opening movement, Altman is not claiming control. He's admitting entanglement. This is not a chapter in AI's history, it's a condition. The system no longer runs in parallel to human culture. It's folded inside it, iterating faster than critique can stabilize. One of the most quietly startling exchanges arrives when Altman discusses memory, not metaphorically, but architecturally. We just launched a new feature where this model will get to know you over the course of your lifetime. There is no emphasis, no hyperbole, just a flat articulation of total recall. The assistant does not forget the assistant to cruise, and with each interaction, the boundary between user and system softens. Altman calls this an extension of yourself, echoing Bernard Stiegler's theory of technics, that all tools are externalizations of memory and that whoever controls the archive shapes the future of attention. Chris Anderson is visibly shaken. It was shocking. It knew who I was. He confesses to a mix of excitement and queasiness, an emotional register that hovers at the edge of disorientation. This too Altman absorbs without spike or pause. Someday, maybe, it'll be listening to you throughout the day, observing what you're doing. There is no rupture in his tone, but the philosophical rupture is absolute. Observation becomes environment. The tool becomes witness. This is not the sci-fi moment of awakening. It's Heidegger's ready-to-hand inversion, the tool that fades into the background until it fails or speaks. And this one speaks gently, predictively, constantly. The system doesn't just wait to be asked, it begins to preempt. This is agency by accumulation. Not autonomy in the classical sense, but orientation. The machine leans toward you. It is here that Byung-Chul Han's critique of digital transparency becomes newly urgent. When Altman frames memory as a feature, not a surveillance vector, he collapses distinction between assistance and enclosure. And yet he doesn't deny the stakes. He admits the queasiness. We are gated on our ability to make progress, on our ability to do that safely. Safety, in his terms, is not a boundary. It's a pacing mechanism. The future won't be stopped. It might only be modulated. The notion of safety continues to mutate as the interview unfolds. Altman introduces the idea of agentic AI, systems that can act independently on behalf of users. This is the most interesting and consequential safety challenge we have yet faced. But even here, the rollout proceeds. Beta users are already asking these agents to make bookings, execute tasks, and pass the web. There is no pause. Instead, there is narrative smoothing. The invocation of trust, the suggestion that users will only embrace agents they believe won't delete their data or empty their bank accounts. Anderson pushes the point. What if someone gives an agent a harmful task? What if it copies itself, scales harm, rewrites systems? Altman's answer is processual. The preparedness framework, safety rehearsed through iteration. But the underlying wager remains the same. Deploy first, correct fast, contain via feedback. It is technocratic improvisation, scaled, a world-building strategy built on the belief that exposure is safer than secrecy, that we can only learn what to fear by meeting it. As the conversation veers into the territory of AGI, artificial general intelligence, Anderson poses a question many outside the technical world have already been quietly asking. If ChatGPT can answer almost anything, isn't that already AGI? Altman's answer is precise in its restraint. It doesn't continuously learn and improve, he says. It can't go discover new science and update its understanding. The system is reactive, not recursive. Yet this distinction, while accurate, feels increasingly provisional. The slope is steepening and Altman knows it. There's not going to be a single magic moment, he continues. The models are just going to get smarter and more capable on this long exponential. This is less a definition than a theological framing. AGI is eschatology without event. It aligns with Paul Virilio's dromology, when speed itself becomes the condition, not the variable. The question of whether we've reached AGI is dissolved. We are already within its acceleration curve, which, like climate, alters meaning through tempo. Altman resists claims of secret breakthroughs. There's no conscious model, he reiterates, no model capable of self-improvement. But even this denial is soft-edged. He describes moments of awe, not control, but proximity, not capacity, but horizon. It's a vocabulary of thresholds, not announcements. And in that threshold, Simone Weil's notion of attention surfaces, a form of readiness that holds without grasping. Altman, despite his position, often sounds more like someone listening to AI than commanding it. When asked if OpenAI has a definition of AGI, Altman offers something startlingly unguarded. You'd get 14 definitions from 10 researchers, he admits. This, too, is a quiet rupture. The organization designed to summon and safeguard AGI cannot agree on what it is. The mission persists, but its object remains unstable. Arendt's distinction between fabrication and action becomes useful here. We are fabricating ever more powerful systems, but acting inside definitions that dissolve upon contact. Anderson presses further, questioning the moral authority to build something that could reshape the species. Altman neither deflects nor preaches. Like anyone else, I'm a nuanced character that doesn't reduce well to one dimension. It's disarming. It's also ideologically efficient. In refusing a singular narrative of himself, Altman mirrors the system he builds, complex, distributed, irreducible. He does not offer finality, he offers iteration. But iteration is not innocence. Altman acknowledges power openly. We didn't think we'd have to build a company around this, he says. Our tactics have shifted. This is not an evasion, it's a confession of scale. The mission began in idealism, but collided with reality. Compute costs, competition, the gravitational pull of influence. It's Stiegler again. Technical systems exceed their own intentions, and their creators are swept into the downstream consequences of architectures they no longer fully author. Yet Altman remains steady. We've made mistakes. We'll make more. This isn't cynicism. It's moral patience, an ethics of duration, not perfection. In that space, he becomes not the prophet of AI, but its cartographer, mapping conditions, not delivering commandments. The map is unstable, the coordinates in flux, but the act of mapping itself becomes a form of care. The interview pivots again, this time into power. Chris Anderson invokes Tolkien, the metaphor of the ring. Elon Musk has accused Altman of being seduced by it, corrupted by control. Altman doesn't flinch, he doesn't deny power, instead he dissects it. What is something I have done where you think I've been corrupted by power? It's not defensive, it's a rhetorical incision. He invites evidence, not allegiance. And in doing so, he reframes the moral question not as purity, but as transparency. This exchange becomes more than a soundbite. It is a study in governance, not the governance of systems, but of self. Altman's answer suggests a shift from control to legibility. He's not arguing that he is incorruptible. He's arguing that he is observable, that his record, his statements, his systems are all on display. But this too echoes Byung-Chul Han's critique. In the age of full visibility, transparency often replaces trust. Being seen does not always mean being accountable. Sometimes it just means being performative. The deeper tension is articulated not in tech speak, but in biography. Anderson asks whether becoming a parent has changed how Altman weighs risk. Altman's answer is unflinching. Having a kid changed a lot of things, by far the most amazing thing that has ever happened to me. He speaks of time differently now, of cost, of attention. The cost of not being with my kid is just crazily high. And yet, he adds, I really cared about not destroying the world before. I really care about it now. The before and after isn't moral, it's intimate. The stakes were always global. Now they're also singular. Here, Hannah Arendt's theory of natality becomes palpable, that every birth introduces the possibility of a new world. Altman, knowingly or not, invokes this when he frames the future not as inheritance, but as a co-authored emergence. His child, he implies, will never live in a world without ambient intelligence. That world will be defined by abundance, acceleration, and the collapse of friction. They will never grow up in a world where computers don't just kind of understand you. It's a prediction, but also a confession. Anderson sharpens the stakes with an ethical provocation. Say, here's a black box with a red button. Pressing it gives your child an unbelievable life, but there's a 10% chance it destroys him. Do you press it? Altman doesn't hesitate. In the literal case, no. The metaphor hovers. This isn't about buttons. It's about design decisions, policy defaults, product rollouts. The probability of harm is never zero. The trade-off is never abstract. Still, Altman returns to patience. Not stalling, but iterating. Society figures out how to get technology right with some big mistakes along the way. It's a vision of progress, but one braided with grief. The mistakes are not theoretical, they are historical, and they will be repeated. But there's something else in Altman's voice, a commitment not just to building fast, but to learning slow, to holding space for uncertainty, even while inside the acceleration. He doesn't promise to protect us from what's coming. He promises to stay in it with us. That may be the most radical stance left. Not omniscience, not control, but attention. A form of moral proximity, not to dominate the wave, but to witness the undertow. It is in the final stretch of the interview that the deepest philosophical provocation surfaces, not in the architecture of models, but in the architecture of belief. Anderson quotes Tristan Harris, who argues that the most dangerous assumption among AI leaders is not malice but inevitability, that the race is on, the arc is fixed, and all that remains is to win it responsibly. Altman listens. Then slowly he replies, people slow things down all the time when something's not safe enough, when it doesn't work. It's a fair point, but it reveals a quiet sleight of frame. The assumption is not that AI must progress, but that it will, unless interrupted by failure. In this formulation, precaution becomes reactive. Ethics become a brake, not a steering wheel. And that's the haunting precision of Harris's warning, that the belief in AI's inevitability may itself be the fuel that renders it unstoppable. Altman does not refute this directly. Instead, he leans on trust in process, communication between labs, caution within teams. People really care about getting this right, he says. The reassurance is effective, not empirical. He then names a shift. With the newest image model, OpenAI has taken a much more permissive stance on what users can generate, especially when it comes to content that may offend or provoke. We made that change, Altman says, because people really don't want models to censor them in ways that they don't think make sense. The pivot here is subtle but massive. Alignment not to moral universals, but to user preference. It's a form of computational populism. The crowd becomes the compass. But the crowd is volatile, and Altman knows it. AI can help us be wiser, he offers. It can say, I understand that's what you want, but have you considered it from this person's perspective? It's a beautiful idea. Not just an assistant, but an ethicist. Not just a mirror, but a dialogical other. But as Sheila Jasanoff has warned, moral capacity cannot be abstracted from context. Systems that reflect collective preference may replicate collective harm unless designed to surface friction, not smooth it. When Anderson proposes a summit, a gathering of ethicists, technologists, and world leaders to co-design red lines, Altman gently resists. Historically, the room has been decided in small elite summits. One of the cool new things about AI is that it can talk to everybody on Earth. The claim is radical and slippery. Everyone can speak, yes, but who writes the prompt? Who interprets the results? Who governs the outcome? The conversation nears its end and the mood softens. Altman is asked to imagine the world his son will inherit. He tells a story of a toddler trying to swipe a magazine like an iPad, a child so immersed in smart systems that older interfaces feel broken. My kids will never grow up in a world where products and services are not incredibly smart, he says. They'll never grow up in a world where computers don't just kind of understand you. It's a statement both filled with wonder and shadowed by loss. Because if understanding becomes ambient, if friction becomes obsolete, what happens to discovery, to patience, to the slow, fragile work of becoming? Altman hopes our children will look back at us with pity, that they'll marvel at our limitations, that the future will be better because it will be faster. But speed is not always clarity, and abundance is not always wisdom. As the applause rises, one truth settles unspoken. The future is no longer a place we're going. It's a system we're already inside. What remains, what must remain, is the ability to feel its edges, to trace its contradictions, to speak, not louder, but slower. So that, as the machines accelerate, our attention does not vanish, it deepens. Altman's final position is not one of dominance, but of duration. He does not claim mastery over what is coming. He claims commitment to staying inside it. We will do our best, he says simply, closing the interview. But the weight of that phrase is cumulative. Across the span of 90 minutes, he has outlined not a roadmap, but a climate. A system of recursive design choices, feedback loops, and moral wagers in which certainty is no longer a threshold, but a liability. There is no manifesto here, no declarative arc. Instead, there is the slow construction of what Fred Moten might call the hold, a space not of control but of tension, where contradictions are sustained rather than resolved. Altman does not promise resolution, he promises presence. That is the core philosophy encoded in his responses. If the terrain is shifting too fast to stabilize, then the ethic must emerge from how one stays with it. Who remains inside the conversation? Who doesn't look away? And yet the most striking absence is structural. The invisible infrastructures that feed and train these models, digital laborers, planetary extractive pipelines, uneven geopolitical exposure, are not named. The everyone in Altman's vision is a statistical everyone, not a situated one. The gap is not malicious, it is systemic. The future, as described, is smooth, intelligent, abundant. But someone still scrapes the data. Someone still gets bypassed when the interface auto-completes the wrong name in the wrong language with the wrong weight. To raise this is not to indict Altman. It is to complete the shadow field his answers trace. Gloria Anzaldua's theory of Nepantla, the space between worlds where transformation begins, becomes vital here. We are not in utopia or catastrophe. We are in between. And the friction of that space is where responsibility lives. This essay, then, is not a judgment. It is a listening exercise to what Altman says, to what the system implies, to what our collective acceleration demands we slow down enough to feel. The real danger is not bad actors or even bad outcomes. It's bad framing, stories that skip the in-between, narratives that soothe instead of stretch. Altman, to his credit, does not soothe. He narrates, he speaks calmly of awe, of iteration, of the deep recursive loop we're now inside, and by doing so, he performs a kind of ethical gesture. Not a claim to certainty, but an invitation to attend, not a promise to guide, but a willingness to stay visible in the noise. What is intelligence? In a world where machines can guess your sentence before you finish it. Perhaps it is not speed nor power. Perhaps it is the capacity to slow the moment down, to make space for context, contradiction, and care. To recognise that in building systems that anticipate us, we are also revealing what we most forget. How to wait, how to hold doubt, how to remain human when the future stops asking for permission. Until next time.
You've been listening to the Deeper Thinking podcast. Today's episode was narrated by Holly, our digital narrator, who helps bring our ideas to life. For further reading, research, and ways to support the podcast, please visit the episode webpage. Thank you for your positive reviews on Apple Podcasts. Your reviews help keep us visible so others can discover and enjoy our content.